The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today on the panel are Pat Scott. Hey, Pat.
Greetings.
And Father Andrew Kinstetter. Hey, Father Andrew.
Hello there.
Before we get into today's show, I want to tell you about another show on the StarQuest Network that I am sure you'll enjoy. If you're a tech fan, you'll like The Secrets of Star Trek. I'm sure of it. In fact, now is a great time to start listening to The Secrets of Star Trek because we're just about to start the fifth and final season of one of the best Star Trek series, Star Trek Lower Decks. It is funny, and it is such an homage to fans. So it is great. A little off-color at times. They kind of go a little far in some of their humor. So beware. It's not really for kids in that sense. But it's a great series, and we're going to be talking about it every episode of the final season. So now's a great time to start listening if you haven't started yet. You can find that wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/Star Trek. So for tonight, we thought we would go back to a little bit of basics and discuss, the basics of one of the, important components of most home computing setups, which is your printer. Most everybody has, if you have a computer, you have the computer and that, but most people get a printer as well. Even if you don't do a lot of printing these days, like I don't do a lot of printing, but I still have to print some things. There's still some things, that some people that require printed forms to send in, for instance. I'm looking at you, Boy Scouts of America. And also the U.S. State Department when I filed my for my passport renewal. So you still got to print things once in a while. And if you get kids, they often want to print stuff out, or they have homework assignments or whatever, or for business. And so we wanted to talk about the basics. What kind of printers are out there? What are they best for? What's each kind best for? What are the pros and cons? And some of our experiences over the years with different printers. I've had a lot of different printers, almost every one of these that we're going to talk about. And so I can, talk from experience with some of these. So I just wanted to get into that. And we were actually talking a little bit beforehand about some of the printers of yore that that some of us have fond memories of. I was talking about how I used to love my old Apple ImageWriter 2 dot matrix printer, and just they can still hear the sound that it makes as that head goes back and forth. Just some certain sounds can give you that memory. It was a great printer for the time, and it was solid, and they lasted forever. I'm sure there's still ones out there working today. Pat, you were mentioning one that you remember from back in the day, which was it wasn't a thermal printer, but it was a kind of printer that burned the image on the page.
Yeah, it was kind of a precursor to fax. Mostly it was used for people sending you stuff. As opposed to my saying, I want a copy. But I did have a colleague that would say, well, I'll burn you a copy of something when instead of saying I'll make a copy or I'll Xerox it or whatever, But it was right. I burn you a copy, and I still remember the smell of that.
Yeah, burn a copy means something different to, like, say, a Gen Xer or an older millennial. That means I was going to copy that onto a CD-ROM for you, CDR.
Right.
I gotta throw out, this is way niche, but the Game Boy printer is what I remember from back in the day.
Printing images?
You could not stickers, but depending on the game that you kind of connected it with, you could do printed sort of characters from the game, or there was a Game Boy camera that I never had them both at the same time, but I'm pretty sure you could print out pictures you took with the Game Boy camera.
Okay.
But very, very.
I also had a Radio Shack. I had a Radio Shack hand computer that was about 3 by 7 inches that you could program in BASIC, and it had a little printing function that you could print from it. and it was very teeny tiny rolls that you had to specially order. But that was our first sales thing at our bookstore.
Oh, wow.
Was I used that programmed in BASIC.
I remember the first computer that I used was a DEC mini computer, and it didn't have a monitor. It had, like, you typed on it and it had paper on a sheet, you know, the alternating green and white. Yeah. And that's like you type in your program and it prints out on the thing, and then you had an error and it would waste another half a tree as it reprinted it. And, you know, that was how I learned to print. And if you were really good, the teacher would let you use the amber monitor, the screen. Prehistoric days. And there were still
Polaroids.
And the thing is, there were still niche printers out there for, like you said, like Polaroid has,
and they're making a comeback even.
Yeah,
I saw that. That was wild. Yeah,
but for most folks, we're gonna talk about the big three, which is inkjet, laser, and then all in one, which can be, it's kind of a misnomer because it can be either laser or inkjet, but it's a tank. Well, it's a slightly different category. So it's either does it by toner or ink. Right. And so, but it's all in one is a slightly different category. So let's take them one at a time. We're going to talk about like what they're best for, their pros and cons, and anything else we can think of for each one. And then, so let's start with the inkjet. So inkjet printers are best for like color printing, for photos, mixed media, that sort of thing, like that.
Brochures.
Yes, brochures. They have a high cost per page, the cost per individual page is pretty high, and they have about a moderate speed when compared to the other ones. Now, most inkjet printers are pretty cheap up front. You can buy the printer itself for not too much. They have high quality photo printing. They're usually pretty small. The downside is, as everyone knows, the high cost of the ink. I've said this before on the show. Inkjet printer ink is literally the most expensive substance on the planet, ounce per ounce. It is more precious than diamonds, platinum, uranium. I don't care what it is you compare it to. It's more expensive. And that's the
Chanel.
Whole point. And that's the whole point. Reason why the printers themselves, it's the razor and blade economic model that's often talked about in business schools. We basically give you the inkjet printer itself for at a loss or at a very or almost just cost, and we make it back on the ink, and that's what we do. So ink is expensive. They are slower than other kinds of printers. The ink doesn't dry really fast. I don't know if you guys have had that experience of grabbing the printed page off an inkjet printer a little too quick and it smudges. And that ink will sometimes clog. I don't know how many times I've had to run, various inkjet printers through the maintenance cycle to try to, the cleaning cycle to try to clean the jets. And it almost never works. It gets to the point where it's almost, time to replace the printer. So that's the basics of it. One of the newer innovations, quote unquote, and again, we've talked about this here, are these ink subscription programs where they sell you the printer and then you subscribe. HP has been doing this. You subscribe to a program where you I'm going to subscribe for 100 pages a month for $4 a month. And so I pay $4 every month, and they just send me as much ink as I use to print the 100 pages, which is, 100 pages doesn't use that much ink. But I'm just paying for it. So it's a, from their point of view, the benefit for me is it's a steady, I know exactly what the cost is going to be. It's just like my Netflix bill or my Disney Plus bill or my phone bill. It's the same every month. I can budget for it, et cetera, et cetera. And if the printer communicates over the internet. And so when I'm running low on ink, they send me a new one. So I always have ink. So I'm never at 11 o'clock at night at finishing up a paper and running out of ink and having to find an all-night store that's going to sell me ink for even more than the ridiculous price that I'm already paying. So that's the bit that the hype that they try to sell you on. But the fact is it's even worse of a deal for you as a consumer because you're locked in to their ink program. You can't use any other ink. You can't use third-party ink.
And you can't go to the store and buy ink and bring it home, the HP brand even.
Yes, right.
It locks you out of that, yeah.
You can only use the ink that they send you.
Right.
And so even if somehow you use the ink and they haven't sent it to you yet, you're out of luck. And, whether you use your 100 pages worth of ink or not, you're still giving them that $4 or $5 a month. It's probably more now since the last time I looked at it. And, so most people end up spending more on their printer than they were before, which is great for HP, not so great for the individual consumer. Have either of you run into this?
Yeah, I have. I recommend people not do this. I have had people that subscribed and then something happened with the software and they kept getting charged. They couldn't print. They were locked out of printing because it monitors your printing efforts. And if you're using more, then they up your subscription. And it's been really a problem. And the worst problem is how you decided to do it and then you decide to stop. Your printer is no good anymore. Right. They supposedly will let you cancel it, and it never has worked for many of my clients. Basically, if they stop using the subscription, they can't use that printer anymore.
I have a hunk of plastic that's no good right now, sitting on in my where my kids' stuff is, their schoolwork stuff is. Yeah, well, I can't use it. I can't.
I'm in this position, I think, actually right now. But do they not let you buy the ink the HP ink even?
No.
Just
nope.
Without
if I go to Home Office Depot, no.
And you can't. Dang. Okay, I've got a Canon.
Canon may be different, but
and it might be. I just inherited it. It was in the office and nobody was using it, so I plugged it into my computer. But it's our of course copy scan thing doesn't do color ink because we're a church, so we can't afford that. So I've got this Canon and it's like refusing to print because it's out of ink. But thankfully I'm not looking to get a subscription. I'm just trying to get some ink for it.
Yeah, that's a different problem. Yeah, it's not a subscription issue. A lot of times they do have, HP tends to do this more than the others, but they have something that can tell whether that is a valid chip or that chip in the ink cartridge is valid or not. And some of them won't print because of that. Other times the print heads get clogged and they won't print. And if you're an infrequent user of printing, I would not recommend an inkjet printer, a cartridge printer.
And I would be okay with it if it was like the subscription was optional. Like if you could choose, like I want to buy a third party ink, or even if I want to buy HP ink. But the fact that they lock you into a subscription is... Well,
you can decide at the time you buy it.
Yeah.
And you install it. But once in some cases, now I've heard of some actual cases where people got a real low cost printer, but the reason it was so low cost is you had to use the subscription. But most of them, it's optional.
Right. You can still buy printers and do it the old fashioned way and buy the ink at the store and Amazon or whatever and do it that way. But this new model, it's a lot like the Office printer copier leasing model, right? You're not leasing the printer in that sense, but you're paying a monthly fee to use the product and have it, all of the consumable in it. With the Office copier stuff, you're leasing, they do maintenance and they do all that stuff. You're not getting any of that. So it's not even as good as that. And frankly, there's a lot of shadiness that goes on in that whole industry. That's a whole nother topic for another time. Now, one other kind of inkjet printer we should mention is, so there's the cartridge ones, but then there are ones that have refillable tanks. And I had one of these for a while. And the idea is you don't have to replace the cartridge, when it goes empty, and it's very wasteful. You have this big hunk of plastic with a chip in it that you can't do anything with. And you're supposed to send it back. But, how many people actually, take the effort to send it back? Well, with this, the refillable tank, the promise is the tanks are much bigger. So you can put more ink at a time, which, again, is the most valuable, expensive substance in the world. So I don't know if you want to buy that much ink at a time, but you can.
But the bottles aren't that expensive either.
Yeah, actually, they are less expensive than the cartridges.
Much less. Yes, the whole bottle is less expensive sometimes than buying one of the little tiny cartridges.
And the whole bottle has more ink than a dozen, probably a couple dozen cartridges. It's a lot.
And one bottle typically lasts most of my clients a year.
Yes. Now, the downside is it's messy, or can be messy. I found it to be messy to refill. At least the design of the Epson.
I haven't been seeing that. Yeah, I've been seeing the newer ones. They don't drip.
So I might have had early ones.
Yes,
and so they may have improved since then. But the one I had, I just getting that tip to pour without spilling it. That and storing the bottles safely so that they don't get spilled was also another issue. And so I just didn't like it. I felt it was a little messy. And I worried about, if the ink cartridges were going to clog. Well, if this tank, if the print head in this doesn't ever get replaced, I can't imagine how much more likely it is to clog. So I was a little worried about that.
Yeah, I've got experience on that. That for that first year, they really worked very well if you use them frequently. Just like the cartridges, though, if you use them infrequently, the heads will clog. They do have good cleaning cycles. The problem is both Canon and Epson have a little absorber inside there that gets the extra ink, and when you deep clean it, it uses a lot of ink and fills that up, and you cannot go to a store and get that recharger or whatever they call it, the absorbing pad. You can't get it replaced. Some techies have gone online and bought them for Epson. They can't do it for Canon, but they can get them for Epson. But they said the process is extremely hazardous in terms of it's easy to get the streams of ink mixed together. And so the thing is, the cost when you buy the bottles, the cost per page goes down to the same or less than laser.
Interesting.
It really does. I've checked on that.
If you are a high volume color printer, you print a lot of color pages, or at least on a regular basis, even if it's a few pages every day, but you're exercising those print heads.
Right.
These refillable tank printers might be your best bet because they'll be the least expensive.
They're very good for that. They are a little bit more expensive, but the clients I have that have used them now for a year, they've been very happy. It's only when the absorber fills up. And if they had some problems that they don't use it very often and they have to go through the extra deep cleaning, then that happens pretty fast.
Okay. So another kind of printer, one of the second type is laser. And laser printers are best for high volume of text documents. You're going to print a lot of text documents. Most offices are using laser printers these days for multi-user purposes for this very reason. They have a low cost per page. They're pretty fast. And that's what I have now is I have an HP laser printer, although mine's all-in-one, and we'll get to that in a minute. But they print fast. They have a lower cost, especially if you're doing black and white. Sharp text, the text printing, even at smaller type sizes, is much sharper because it's the laser is burning the toner into the paper as opposed to ink, which tends to absorb and spread even a little bit. So that's you get a little bit of fuzziness with text on Inkjet, especially at smaller text sizes. And then toner will last longer than the Inkjet cartridges. The toner cartridges will last longer, so you're not replacing them as often.
And your print heads don't get clogged up. Exactly. You don't have that problem with the laser.
That's right. Now, the downside is they cost more up front. There's no denying that. They're much more expensive up front. They are larger in general.
Heavy.
And they're heavy. So you need space for them. They're not going to go, on the bookshelf next to your kid's desk.
Actually, HP has and one other one has a pretty small, lighter weight black and white laser.
Just black. Yeah. So just black and white.
Yeah.
Color lasers printers are okay at printing color, but they're not going to be nearly as good at photos as color inkjets. So I don't know a lot of people who rely on their home printers for printing out photos still. I mean, that was the thing not long ago, but it's so easy to get prints at Walgreens or CVS or, even online.
Even with a color photo printers, it's just a mess trying to get it exactly the right thing and have to reprint it because the color mix isn't quite right. And I know my son used to have a device that would look at the color on the screen and match it up to what the ink would actually produce because, otherwise you throw away a lot. Exactly.
So let, CVS and Walgreens and those guys spend time calibrating their printers instead of you doing
and most places have a really nice camera place in town, and they usually do a beautiful job on that type of thing. A little bit more expensive.
Yeah, find your local camera place. Yeah.
Well, and a laser printer just seems more appropriate for office-y sort of stuff, if it, rather than home.
Well, I have a lot of clients who get lasers for home and get the, the lighter weight ones, not the heavy duty ones, because they like it better and they don't print frequently. If you don't print frequently, a laser is your best choice.
I guess I'm thinking with kids who, when I was a kid, it was like, I remember printing pictures of, Star Wars and stuff all the time. And, but
that would be cheaper on a laser.
It would have been cheaper, I guess, now that I think about it. But
yeah, exactly. I mean, my kids have often used the copier functions and the all-in-ones, which we'll get to in just a sec, to do that copy, coloring pages out of books or various things like that they wanted to color or cut up or what have you. So those are the pros and cons in laser. Let's get into the all-in-ones, because really I think a lot of people tend to want to get the all-in-one, because what's not to like about having, you're going to spend a bunch of money, you might as well get a bunch of functions out of it. So this is the all-in-one is the best for, say, a home office where whether you're working from home for a company or just to do home management sorts of things, paying bills and that sort of thing. It has a moderate cost per page. I mean, it sort of depends. Did you get an inkjet?
Yeah, that's really the difference. Basically the all-in-one is you can have them both in the inkjet and the tank and the cartridge type and the laser. So.
Right, exactly. And when it says all-in-one, so what does it mean? You can print. It usually has a flatbed scanner. The scanner lets you copy as well as scan. So scan means to make something into a digital version on your computer. Copy just means make this a second printed copy of this. And fax. Now, fax, well, maybe in the church and doctor's offices and maybe even lawyers, that's still a thing. I
used it just last month. Yeah.
Did you have to do faxing?
Well, it was applying for a Visa credit card for the church, and it was either fax or mail the signature application, and that was like, okay, fine, I'll just use. And we had a fax machine hooked up, and then we've gotten a couple faxes in the last month for like the some religious group out there who's publicizing their national sort of apostolate. It's like, okay. But it startled me the other day because it just came on and it was like, oh, it's okay. It's this apostolate from somewhere in Timbuktu that. But
yeah, I don't even have a landline, so there's no way for me to hook up, the fax up to anything. So
I was going to say most of the all-in-ones may include fax. You don't pay any extra for it. It's just some models have fax and some don't. And all of my home users, unless they have a dedicated old-style phone line, they can't use the fax. Yeah. So it's pretty much useless.
Right. And so the pros on it are that it's cost effective, you get, and space saving because you're combining multiple devices into one machine. And what you're really doing is combining a printer and a scanner.
Right.
It's basically two devices. Although I also have a sheet fed scanner, which I find much more useful than a flatbed scanner, but that's a whole nother thing. Actually, my all-in-one, which I forget what model of HP is, but I'm sure it's this long series of letters and numbers that would be meaningless. But it's actually the kind where you can put a bunch of sheets on top and it feeds them all through. And so I really like that. It's a really nice printer. But
with the all-in-ones, it's kind of like you can make a decision before you buy it whether you want the sheet feed or the flatbed, and a sheet feed adds more cost, but it can be very, very convenient.
Yes, that's right. And like we said, laser or inkjet versions. And I think even like refillable tank versus inkjet cartridge, like, so all the different options that you can get on laser and inkjet are available in the all-in-one.
Right.
The downside is they usually cost more than a single function printer of either type. I mean, that's just, makes sense. There's a complexity, which means there's more things that can go wrong. And that's a real downside, I think. And I don't often find that it's the scanner that goes wrong. I mean, usually if something's going to go wrong, it's something having to do with the printing anyway. So I don't think that's a huge con. And it doesn't excel at any one thing, right? I mean, it's, jack of all trades, master of none, but usually it's fine. I think most people have very utilitarian needs for printing anyway. So
I think for the most part, someone, especially if you're going to print something more precious, photos or whatnot, you're going to go to your Walgreens or whatever anyway. So
specialty.
Yeah, I think the all-in-ones are perfect for home use.
Right, yeah, because again, you can scan in. A lot of people use it not as a scanner, but as a copier to make receipts and things like that. Copy their receipts or whatever. And of course, those of us who want to actually put them into the computer can use it as a scanner. Although there's other options for that as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
And like I said,
most of my people get all-in-ones.
Yeah, for kids, this flatbed scanner is great. You teach them how to copy, coloring pages or whatnot out of books, and they'll be happy forever. And, you just maybe need to monitor them so they don't copy hundreds and hundreds of pages. But, in general, my kids have been good about it, and they like to, copy stuff and cut it up. Like I said, cut it up, color it, whatever. And it's really, it's a little bit of, it's easy enough that even kids can do it generally. They know how to slide it on there and hit the go button, and it goes. And it's pretty simple. So
I had this one beautiful, just a quick anecdote. I had this one real beautiful family in a parish, not where I'm currently at, but in a previous assignment where their daughter asked her mom and dad if she could print a picture of, I think it was Obi-Wan Kenobi or Chewbacca. It was Star Wars related something, my influence totally, but mom and dad said yes, but she didn't specify how much she wanted to print. And so she printed the same picture of like Obi-Wan, like 4x5, but like printed it over and over and over and over and over, and then taped it all across her, like made it wallpaper in her bedroom.
Oh my gosh.
Mom and dad were not too thrilled, but it was, they when I was over there for supper one night, they showed it to me because it was like, what can you do at that point? It's already done, but it was,
yes, that's right.
It was comical. So yeah.
That's
the
good.
one thing that neither a laser or the all-in-ones or the whatever can do anymore is the thing that the dot matrix did so well. You could print banners.
Oh,
it would go all the way across the back of the bus or the side of the wall or, the garage. I mean, you can't do that. You have to cut and paste and, all that type of thing and tape.
That's true. We've lost something when we didn't have the continuous feed paper like we used to.
Yeah, we really
I remember having was it the Broderbund Print Center?
Yeah, print shop
software. Yeah. Print shop. Yeah.
And making cards. I remember making cards for my mom for her birthday out of it. And, we don't do that we don't have that anymore. And I feel like we've kind of lost something. You could send an e-vite or whatever, or e-card. But
there's something about physical mail or a physical letter, physical card that's way more precious.
I mean, as a kid, you could draw something on a piece of paper, and I've got, all the ones my kids ever gave me, and that's great. But there was also, I felt as a kid, a sense of accomplishment in creating something that looked good. Like I could tell, like my own drawing was childish, but this looked good, and I was proud of it, and I could give it to my mom. And so I kind of, I think we've lost something when we don't have things like print shop. I don't know if there's anything out there like that, but
I continued to buy upgrades on that for years and loved it. But it was like, at some point it just, another company bought them out, and it was, it wasn't supported like it was before.
I imagine the modern equivalence is sort of like Shutterfly or something, but it's not the same.
There was a guy who was like a former Apple employee or something, and he had this little bespoke service where he would make postcards. You would upload a photo, and you would put your own. You would decorate it like you would, like in print shop and all stuff, and then he would send it with real postage in the mail, either to you or to someone else. Wow. And I think that's probably the closest version to that would be out there. I wonder if it's still out there. I don't remember the name though. I'll have to see if I can dig it up, or if any of the listeners remember it. Let me know. I remember Leo Laporte talking about it a few years ago. I think he used that for Tech TV, for Twit's Christmas cards. Wow. Yeah, the little nostalgia there. Well, anyway, as far as the printers go, so I'm not going to recommend any particular printers. I haven't tested them. I don't feel it strongly. Frankly, I hate most of them, but just that's more of a visceral thing. What I will do is I'll put in the show notes a bunch of links to good reviews. So with the Wirecutters reviews of the best all-in-one printers, PC Mag's best all-in-one printers for 2024, Tech Radar's best home printer of 2024, and CNET's best printers for 2024. And they give a couple categories on that article too. So
yeah, and typically when my clients ask, it's typically Epson, Canon, HP, Brother. Anything else other than that, I don't want them to to stray into Lexmark and some of these others. They're just not very good.
Do you have an order? Like, do you have a brand that you prefer over the others? Are they all
Epson, Canon, and depending upon which type of thing you're wanting, whether it's a tank or an inkjet or cartridge, pardon me, then Canon and Epson. If you want to do photos, I suggest Epson. If you want to do general stuff, the Canons are really good. HP's I put third because I hate their practices. You must sign up for an account if you want to scan.
Yeah.
You can print without signing up for an account, but you do have to have an account with them if you want to use your printer with the scan function. They're awful
even though
about
you're
that.
not scanning anything into the cloud.
Nope.
Yeah.
And then Brother, I didn't like about 5 years ago. Their software was awful. It was terrible to try to get connected on the internet. But the last few years have had really good reviews, and I've had several clients buy them and enjoy them and feel like they've been real good, solid printers. So I haven't bought one myself because I had this long-standing disagreement with them. But I'll say that a lot of my clients like the Brothers.
One thing we didn't talk about was print drivers, and that's because I think it's a much better situation than it used to be. I know an Apple, I'm not sure, you can tell me, Pat, what it's like on Windows. But an Apple, you connect a printer, and the software has the printer driver almost always, especially if it's one of the big companies, ready there, already in the system. You don't have to download and install them.
And with Apple, you get the scanner drivers. Mm-hmm. Right. With a PC, almost any printer you can hook up, it can print. None of them will scan until you go to the website and pull down the printer drivers. That's the difference, and I love Apple for that.
And I think probably some of the more, I had this, we had a fancier copy scan, one of the commercial ones in the office. My Windows PC that I'm using for work could connect to it, but couldn't print until I went to the website and downloaded a specific
the
driver.
big commercial ones, you have to have
some of those
drivers.
You do need. Yep.
Yeah.
But any of the home grade printers, they're all built into Windows, especially Windows 10 and 11. They do a really good job of that. It's just that my people connect them themselves and are so happy and then say, but I can't get it to scan. I say, nope, we got to go get the drivers.
It used to be on Apple that print drivers was the bane of our existence because, you had to wait. We were the second class citizens, so the Windows drivers were always better than the Apple drivers, and you had to wait for them to upgrade them and all that nonsense. And when the OS upgraded, your printer's drivers stopped working. All that is in the past, and they just work now, and that is fantastic if you're an Apple user.
And on Windows, what happens is that with updates, all of a sudden you lose some functionality. Oh, I can't double side anymore, or I can't do this anymore because it's an older printer. It'll still print, but you can't do some of the special functions as the operating system gets more complex and the printer gets older.
Weird.
One more quick thing to add. I did a quick Google search. There is actually the Print Shop Deluxe 6.4, which is $50 and downloadable and
Nostalgia.
it's up for Windows 11. I mean, so not even and there's like so speaking of that, if you're interested in using Print Shop, it's still out there and running.
What company makes it?
It's still Broderbund.
Broderbund.
Oh, because it got bought out by somebody else at one point, so Broderbund must have taken it back. Must
have, because it's broderbund.com, and it's the Print Shop Deluxe 6.4.
Wow.
So,
it's only Windows.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the version I had was for the Apple II, so I mean that ship is sailed. But,
that ship is no longer able to float.
there are days I wish I had my Apple II GS still.
I know, and the 2 Plus was really great too.
All right, so that is printers, and that was a great discussion. And we're going to do a future episode on scanners. We'll talk about the different kinds of scanners and the pros and cons of those as well. So if you have specific questions or ideas about scanners, you can let us know.
I want to make one more comment about all of those printers, that people will want to set them up wirelessly, and that is it can be done these days with homes that are spread out. Often a Wi-Fi printer, it can't print in the other room, and they don't know why, and so it goes offline a lot and that type of thing. If you have a choice and you can put your printer next to your computer, put a wire between you and it, whether it's a network wire into the router or whether it's a USB, wire it. And you can still set it up Wi-Fi so that you can print from your phone or your iPad or whatever. But, you don't have this problem about the printers in one wing of the house, the router's in the middle, and you're on the third side. I mean, it just won't work.
Right.
And if you have mesh printers, a mesh system, often printers get very confused about which they are near and whether they will print from anything on the network.
Okay. That's probably explains some of the issues I had with my old Inkjet that I don't use, whereas my laser is Ethernet.
Right. If you could do Ethernet, you've avoided that. But with the mesh systems, if you're trying to have the same network name across your whole house and your computer is, your computer or your phone is hooking to one of those mesh units and the printer's on another one, the newer ones will handle it. But a lot of the 2 or 3 year old printers, they're locked into thinking, oh, that's the MAC address that I need to go to. And it won't work.
Okay. Good point. All right. So now, as we move on, we want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the secrets of technology, including Timothy V, Josip J, Alexander S, Louis M, and Adam H. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the secrets of technology in all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So let's move on to some headlines. Our first one, I don't know if everyone knew, but the Internet Archive, which is a massive service to all of our humanity, to society, the Internet Archive was down from cyber attacks, and it's partially back, mainly as a read-only service. So on October 9th, the Internet Archive was hit by a combination of cyber attacks, a data breach that compromised 31 million user accounts, exposing email addresses, usernames, and hashed passwords, which means unless they can break the encryption, they don't have the actual password, but they have the encrypted versions of them. Then there was distributed denial of service attacks, DDoS, and then they defaced the website. They put their nonsense on the front page. So they took the whole thing down, 16 billion pages. I think they said like some crazy number. Mm-hmm. And they've been bringing it back little by little, very carefully rebuilding it, making sure as they go that the security is up to snuff. And so the Wayback Machine is back, which is great because I can't tell you how many times I've used the Wayback Machine to find things on my own websites.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know I had that there. Did that go missing? When you have a website that's 20 something years old, you tend to lose things. But in any case, some is back, but not all. And that's, because the Internet Archive has tons of things. They have libraries of old movies and old software and all kinds of stuff on there. It's fantastic. So, like I said, a great service. But it's slowly coming back. Do you guys use the Internet Archive very much?
I've used it on occasion for more in research. There was some really old books and stuff that they had scanned in there, and I'd been able to pull up. Of course, I'm not even remembering one right now, but it was when I was in canon law. It was weird that I found it on the Wayback Machine, but I mean, it's because it's public record, and so they had pulled it on that. So that's really the only time that I've used it recently. But I mean, other than it's just, I mean, it's cool to, I mean, even go to your, favorite website and just see how it looked 20 years ago, is really cool, because it's an archive of the way the internet was when it started out. And so, I mean, I think, there's a lot of good stuff there. I'm glad that they're coming back.
Well, I've used it for things like when I go I've got a lot of things that I will clip and save PDFs of web pages, etc. And I'll go, and the web page that was there originally is gone. So I will go use the Wayback Machine there to go see if I can find that website, what it looked like 2 years ago when this thing was published, because it's not there anymore. So, right. Or even in existing websites, they may cull articles that they had before. So I've gotten, so I don't just give myself a link to an article. I'll actually go into reader mode, save it as a PDF, and save the link too. But there's just so many things that get broken with links breaking all the time. So that's what I use it for.
And the archive has become even more important because Google no longer caches pages in the search. So like sometimes if you in the olden days, when you would search on Google and a website came up and maybe the site would be down or the page, the page would be gone. You could go to a cached version, like the version of the page as it looked when Google scraped it, when it indexed it, and you could see the page. Well, they're not doing that anymore.
I didn't realize
that. A bummer. But instead, they're actually now giving links to the Wayback Machine version of it.
Cool. Yeah.
So, which made it, they did that just before the archive went down. So it was like, but yeah, the archive itself is fantastic. Like you mentioned, Father, like books in the public domain, they've got thousands and thousands of books in the public domain. Like there's Google Books that has lots of books, but the Internet Archive has even more. And they actually have agreements with different libraries, like the Smithsonian and libraries in the U.S. and Canada and all over to scan and books. And what they're doing is preserving history, and that's important because like when we have physical history, we have photos of places, of our history of 100 years ago, that sort of thing. And we have physical books and physical stuff. But when everything's digital, it's ephemeral, and it will just, people will just delete it because I don't need that anymore. It's old. Where we don't
lose history
to preserve, right? And so they're preserving, and they're like I said, a nonprofit. They are an independent nonprofit. They exist. I can't imagine how much server space the Internet Archive must take up. It says you can search the history of over 866 billion web pages on the internet. That's just the Wayback Machine. That's not the rest of the archive. So I'm glad it's back. Boo to the people who took it down.
Wasn't there something recently that somebody was suing the Internet Archive to get things that they didn't want in there off?
Well, the publishers were suing because they were saying that some of their scanning of books was a violation of copyright. So they have some books that they've scanned in, and like you could borrow books from them, which they started this during COVID, where you could borrow books like a regular library from them that were scanned in, books that are in print. but they had a copy and they would loan it out. But the publishers are very itchy about libraries loading digital copies of things,
and they only use them so many times before that license gets killed. Right.
And the archive has been very libertarian about the freedom of sharing media, and about copyright itself and free fair use. That's the what I'm looking for. So they've been kind of pushing back on that, but they don't have the resources that these big publishers do. So they've been having to fight off those attacks,
the sharks,
legal attacks and whatnot. So good for the archive. Glad to see them coming back. Hopefully he's stronger than ever. Then our next headline comes from the UK newspaper, The Guardian. It says U.S. startup charging couples to screen embryos for IQ. So this is a company called Heliospect. It's a stealth startup, which means that they're just starting and they're not very public about what they're doing yet until they get going. But based on some investigative reporting by various people, what they're doing is helping wealthy couples screen embryos for various genetic factors using a controversial technology that smacks of eugenics. And what they said that they show the company markets its services at up to $50,000 to help clients test 100 embryos, and they claim to select children to be born from among those embryos, and boasting that they could produce a gain of more than 6 IQ points, and other factors that they could seek to rank them based on sex, height, risk of obesity, risk of mental illness, beauty, even. This is disturbing on many levels, of course.
There's been many sci-fi movies written about this type of thing that didn't end well. Gattaca and AI and several other things where they try to create the perfect child.
Right. Now, we could take it at several different levels, but there's a basic level here, which is the selecting embryos in vitro fertilization is used for this. You're fertilizing eggs and creating children, embryonic children, outside the body, outside the mother, and that is wrong, right? Like from the get-go, that is immoral. We should start at that basic point. So we are already past immorality before Heliospect even enters the front door. But we get to this next level where they were saying that they could eventually have thousands of embryos that they could screen for the perfect child. And there's something wrong with the idea of, as a parent, I want to create the perfect child. And like you're shopping for a new coat. It has to have all the right characteristics. Every child is perfect, no matter what genetic abnormalities may exist. And if I were someone who had a congenital defect, this would be very disturbing to me. Am I defective? And what does this say about us? So that's my approach. I mean, what do you all think of this? I'm gonna go on a limb and say you're not far off from where I am on this.
I mean, go ahead, Pat.
Well, I was just going to say, in the selecting 100 embryos, what happens to the one that they select? They might implant, but what about all those others? They're destroyed. Yeah, they're destroyed.
We're in a really interesting, horrible situation now with this whole thing because, Dom, you're right. There's really the two issues. There's the IVF issue, and even right now, I mean, there are embryos that are frozen that have already been created. And I mean, even bioethics, looks at this and is asking the question, what do we do with them? Is it even moral to put them into a woman and then adopt, so to speak, the embryo and raise the child? Or do you pull the plug and let the embryos all die? Neither is really the best situation. I mean, I think a lot of Catholic bioethics theologians would moral theologians would probably err on the side of adoption. But even that, you've already done. There's already been an evil that's
violated.
Been
Yeah.
done. The IVF has already created this. So that's the one issue, and that's a whole other topic. But when it comes to even then, like screening for IQ and screening for these things, it just rankles me because it goes against everything that we believe. Yeah, it's and I mean the whole point of even Catholic social teaching, the number one point is the dignity of the human person. And I have a brother who's autistic, and to say that he's somehow less because he doesn't have a high IQ is just horrible and wrong. I got an email today from parishioners at a previous parish, and their firstborn son has Down syndrome, and they're just, the picture that they sent me, he's now an older brother, and it was just the most adorable picture. But again, like, you're gonna screen to say that Nathaniel is not worth life.
Yeah, should not have been born.
Or even on a, like, okay, I want a tall kid versus a short kid. I mean, like, you can, it's just, it destroys the very fundamental dignity of every human person.
It makes everybody into a god who's creating their own image.
It's the quintessential sin of Adam and Eve, that instead of just trusting God to provide, I'm going to play God and choose for myself. And that's,
I was going to say, what a horrible world it would be if we lived in a world where everyone could choose exactly what their children, because they'd all be the same, and we would have none of the beautiful variety and diversity that we have now. And what a horrible world it would be if there were no people who lived across the spectrum. You know, we tend to think of as this very narrow band as normal and healthy. But just because someone falls outside that band doesn't make them unhealthy. It just makes them different from the people in the middle. I mean, we all live in a spectrum. It's not just people with autism. We're all living on a spectrum. And, I know everybody I know who has had someone with Down syndrome in their family has said, I'm glad that they're in my life, just as much as I'm glad that another sibling is in my life, but I'm glad that so-and-so is in my life. Not that they're perfect. We don't want to objectify them as the always happy people or whatnot.
There's an innocence and joy that they have that I think I am sometimes jealous of.
Right. Exactly. So, and then there's another level to this where I just have to laugh, because it's like, you want to go through all this to raise IQ by 6 points. And IQ is one of the dumbest measures. I mean, we hear, people talk about, taking IQ tests and stuff, but IQ is so nebulous. So, if someone wants to quote their IQ score at you, it's a load of baloney, because IQ is highly contextual, highly subjective. And so the idea that, I'm going to spend $50,000 so that my kid has a 6-point higher IQ test, and that means they're going to be successful in life, I can almost guarantee that you're going to get the ironic situation of that kid sleeping on your sofa until he's 27 and smoking pot with his buddies. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You're not raising up the next.
And that's all 6 is such a small amount anyway.
Yes.
It's stupid.
Yeah.
And we even have this already, I mean, in our kind of just common language, like book smarts versus street smarts.
Yes.
You might be book smart, but you might be incredibly not so smart in other areas. And how can you gauge that that's the best IQ to have?
Exactly. Well, and that's the other argument is nurture versus nature. How much of what amounts to success in life is from genetics, and how much is about the environment and the way
you were raised, education, the whole bit.
Yes, all those things. So one of the things that the article talks about is this sort of thing is illegal in the UK, but it's not illegal in the US. It's illegal to screen for IQ and these factors, but it's not illegal in the US. I really think it should be. We should find a way to get this to kind of roll back and really put some guardrails on this. I know, we should ban anything that leads to the death of children anyway, but we need to start somewhere. And I think stopping this nonsense has got to be at least an easy one for us. So our final headline it originally comes from the New York Times, but this one is in the Seattle Times. They reprinted it. And it's the headline is How to Say No to Our AI Overlords. And the article itself is supposed to be a practical explanation of how with Google, Meta, Microsoft, and Apple, we can turn off the AI functions in their software. And sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But there's a bigger question where they talk about how these companies are sort of imposing these AI features on us without even asking whether we want them or not. And there's sort of just an assumption that we want them. And and it talks about how some people mistrust it and all that other stuff. And I'm of two minds of this. On the one hand, yes, there's always this assumption among the tech bros, the engineers, the tech titans, that everyone wants the newest, greatest, whatever. Like, we need to have the new feature, like the newest, greatest, and we're going to shove it down your throat. On the other hand, we've had AI and stuff for much longer than people realize. When your phone takes a photo, it's not taking a photo. It's using artificial intelligence to construct an image based on the light that is captured on a sensor. I mean, that's AI. So I'm a little of two minds about this attitude toward it. I feel like a lot of people have this sense of they have a particular idea of what AI is that is not exactly what AI really is today. I don't know if I'm being clear on that. What do you think?
Well, I think most people think of AI as I'm going to ask this chatbot something and I'm going to give it some information or feed it a PDF and it's going to do these things for me. That's what most of my clients think of it. And they don't trust always that they're going to get good answers. And so most of my clients ask me to remove the visible things that AI is on the Microsoft stuff, just so they don't see it, because they're not interested in playing. And there is about 10% that say, I'd like to play with a little bit, So
right.
But you're right, AI is more than just these chatbots.
Yes. Exactly.
I think I'm of the opinion, kind of maybe going a little bit bigger philosophically, like if this technology is the newest and greatest thing and they're pushing it on us, even if we want it or not, if it's truly going to change our lives, it'll mesh and work well. And if the majority of us don't want it, don't like it, they're going to pull it, with the next iPhone or whatever. I mean, I even think about the iPhone, like it was, go less buttons on the outside and less buttons and get rid of all the buttons. And now the iPhone 16 added buttons,
it's causing me a problem too.
Right. So it's like, I mean, at one point, like minimal buttons was the push, and then there was kind of pushback against it saying, no, that wasn't it. So they reversed it. And so with this, there's a lot of, I think, dangers with AI and what it can do. But I also sort of think if it's not going to be a genuine help to make our lives better, there's going to be enough pushback that it'll go back into the realm of, if you want to play with it, you can download the app and play with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can see where that's different from using AI in medicine or something like that to help with diagnoses or help with refining new viruses or antiviruses or whatever. I can see that's different from the common people, and they're pushing it on the common people.
Right.
And I think that's there's a pushback on that.
What people don't like or what people are concerned about are, I think, basically two parts of AI: the generative AI, like deep fakes especially, and chatbot AI,
and voices.
So, and I put that under generative in the sense of stuff that creating new things. And there's lots of other kinds of AI out there. There are large language models that do various things, like you said, in scientific pursuits, helping to dig through data and that sort of stuff, which is fine. Then there's a whole nother level, which is the AGI, the artificial general intelligence, which is data from Star Trek or, the ship's computer or whatever. It's that HAL
Android
9000.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the personality type AI.
Right. And I think most sane people don't want that. Some people do, but most people don't want that. They recognize that's a ship. That's too far. That's a step too far. They're wary of the chatbot things, especially the promises made and the difficulties that they can cause, especially when they're not accurate.
Yeah.
And then
or
the
they're just
generative
making up
AI
things.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. When they hallucinate and start making up stuff or
attributing sources that aren't real.
Right. Or telling you to put glue on pizza. That was a famous one.
Or that you can baptize with Gatorade. Infamous Catholic Answers AI.
Yeah,
I knew the AI priest, but I didn't hear about the Gatorade.
That was the AI priest, and that was what caused they kind of pulled him. And
Father Justin suggested you could use Gatorade to baptize. But as far as they're talking about, like the ability to the big four, the ability to turn off or limit to increase your privacy from it. No surprise to me, the one that scored the best was Apple.
Yeah.
That because Apple, they have said, and they have offered up the ability for anyone to audit them on this. They have segregated your data from their servers in such a way that whatever you use the AI for, they don't have access to it, and they're not using it in any way. So that's a nice reassurance for those of us who are Apple users.
Yeah.
So I think that's a bit for our headlines. Let's move on to our picks of the week. And Pat, what is your pick this week?
Well, I came across on the Amazon Prime Day a kid's Kindle. So I kind of looked at some of the, what's different about a kid's Kindle. And one of the really attractive parts was for only about $20 more to get the kids version, you get 2 years of warranty on the thing instead of the 1 year. And of course, if you've got somebody in your family that's a child, you get all this subscription to all of these books. And it's not any different Kindle. I mean, it's the same Kindle. It's just got, and it comes with a cover, a real cute cover. So you get a cover and you get an extra year's warranty and you get this subscription to all of these children's books, which I'm looking at my grandchildren. I wish I could be up there, but I'm looking at the little one here thinking, hey, I can read her stories out of that.
Yeah.
So I decided I would get it for a Prime Day, and I got it for less than it is obvious, now, but it's a great little Kindle. It really is. So
I bought my kids all my kids have Kindles, and I ended up getting them regular ones and just putting them on my account as opposed to making them kids versions.
Right. And you can do this. And this one, basically, when you log in, it assumes you're a child until you say sign out of kids, and then it's a regular Kindle.
Right.
And you've got your whole library there and everything.
Yeah. And that was the thing is I found like I just wanted to have them be able to have access to my whole. I mean, my kids are little
to your library,
probably.
Sure. Right.
Yeah, just to have the whole library. And I know there are books there I don't want them to read, but I trust them to. We talk about it, like we know, like some of my spy thriller novels have content in it that they're not for kids. It's not
right.
It's for grown-ups. And I make clear to them, okay, this is one you can read, but this is this is what you shouldn't. Whereas the kids has much more guardrails on it, the Amazon Kids thing. And
depending upon the parent who has the time to monitor and help guide them, this would be an easier alternative to get kids started without having to have mom and dad constantly surveilling it.
I'm curious about what's in the Amazon Kids library subscription.
I'll have to go through, but there are thousands and thousands and thousands of books from well-known authors. Yes, I have
all of them.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. That is neat.
And you could download any or all of them, or depending upon the size of what it takes up. I haven't looked to see if there's any audio books on there, but that would be good for some parents too. If a lot of children's classics and everything were available there.
Yeah, definitely.
I'll go through the authors list and let you know what I find.
Yeah, that'd be great. Father, what's your pick this week?
Well, I'm going to talk about the good part of AI. I know we sort of talked about it sort of in a negative light, but AI does have some real positive things, and it can be really helpful in a lot of areas. And Google, through Gemini, has this resource called Notebook LM, and basically what it is you can upload. Or I'm reading from their website. You upload PDFs, websites, YouTube videos, audio files, Google Docs, or Google Slides, and Notebook LM will summarize them and make interesting connections between the topics, powered by Gemini. And it's really crazily accurate and I mean really cool. One of the things that I'm focusing on specifically is there's the ability you can create an audio. Basically, it's an audio summary, but when you create you play it. It's two artificial intelligence voices, a male and a female, talking about whatever you've uploaded, as if they're on a podcast and they're doing a deep dive into it. And it is, I mean, they mess up a few words here and there, but like I uploaded my thesis to it and listened to them talk about my thesis for 15 minutes, which was crazily cool. I mean, and they're just pulling directly from the source material, so they're not making up things. Although sometimes, like I said, they might get something wrong here and there, and you just got to remember that and check it. But I mean, from an academic point of view, it's helpful if you're trying to summarize an article, if you're trying to read something that's super dense. But even to the point, like you can tell it, like you can say go to sqpn.com. And then you can have them listen to them talk about your website for 15 minutes, and
or your podcast.
I uploaded. I have a couple. I have a player's guide to a Mario game from the 90s, and they spent 30 minutes talking about all the different tricks and things to do in the game, and it sounds like as if they were experts. And it is kind of funny because the voices, because they're both fed the same source, they're both experts in the material, but they try to, like, one of the voices will be like, oh, do tell me about, X, Y, and Z. And then the other will be the expert. But sometimes the first person jumps back in with more detail on the situation because, I mean, they're all, fed the same information. So you can kind of see some of the comical sort of AI backing of it. But it's just really cool. But also, I mean, from an academic standpoint, I mean, it's a really helpful tool, and the voices are so natural. I sent it to my brother and didn't tell him it was AI at first, and he couldn't. He wanted to know the link to the podcast, and I was like, nope, this is AI.
To feed it something like Augustine's Confessions or the Summa and see what it made of those.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It'll take any PDF.
But the thing I love about it is they're so enthusiastic. They're very like perky and enthusiastic. So, like talking about the Catechism of the Catholic Church, and in Catechism 3226, no way, yeah, way.
Wow.
Well, my thesis, we're talking about the Code of Canon Law, and they're like, oh, that's so interesting. And that's like, oh, this is going to be a deep dive today. Like, get ready. And then they're like, oh, do tell. And oh, yeah, it's a little over the top, but at the same time, it makes it enjoyable to listen to. And I think, most podcasts, you're going to listen to one that's upbeat and positive over one that's, like just a downer all the time,
Right.
So definitely they have the upbeatness to grab your attention, and you can have fun with it or use it as a tool. I'm having way too much fun with it. It is really fun.
It's your entertainment this month.
If you're the sort of person who gets lots of like dry reports or things like that you have to slog through, this may be a way to do that on like long drives or something like that. I can imagine. Or if you want to learn something, and you just throw some technical book into it or manual into it and learn something.
Well, like I get, I'm subscribed to like some academic journals, and I get PDF versions of them.
Yeah. And
so I've thrown in some of those into it, and hearing them talk about Bishop Thomas Paprocki and Canon, 915, it's, and they're experts on it. So it's like, but it's helpful because they do break down the information for you and make it if you, especially a dense academic sort of thing, they make it easily understood by just the typical person.
Can you feed it audio or video as well?
You can
can
do audio files. I have not tried an audio file yet, but I think it has to be an MP3. You can do YouTube videos, Google Docs, Google Slides, so even a PowerPoint, or if you convert a PowerPoint to a PDF, you could upload that.
How long does the audio come out?
What?
I'm sorry. How long is the audio once, like the summary?
Depends. I've not seen anything so far less than 10 minutes, but I've seen it go all the way up to almost 30.
Okay.
So
probably depending on the length of the PDF. Yeah.
Yeah. But sometimes like the one that went 30, like the last third was like a repeat of the middle chunk. So it was maybe trying to do too much and it repeated itself. So
I'd kind of like to feed it the 6-hour Matt Fradd, Jimmy Aiken YouTube video. And have it boil it down. That would be fun.
Well, and even if you don't want to do the audio, you can just on the website, you can have it break it down by like, here's a good summary. Here's a good outline. It'll generate like, here's some good discussion questions about the material that you might want to consider.
We should make that clear, is that it's not just about generating the podcast. Right, it actually it will do the text thing.
There's a lot of textual tools that are there as well, but the audio thing is just too cool not to share.
In fact, I think I'm going to share it with Jimmy because Jimmy and I were talking recently about some tools for helping him slog through a lot of research material very quickly.
Well, and this would be audio for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He could throw some of these books and other things in there, and not that it would replace the work, but it would. Is this the right place? Is this the right?
Should I spend time on this? Yeah.
So I'll have to give that link because that sounds great.
And I don't have time sometimes to sit through a video on YouTube to do something. And I would love to have a text version of that, or even just a summarized audio on a lot of things. And then if I really was interested, go back and watch the whole thing.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Well, and that's key to remember. Sometimes the AI will get it wrong, so you might need to go back to the original just to make sure you're getting the right facts and everything.
But you could say, "Well, I'm not even interested in that topic now that I've listened to 5 minutes of it. Let's just skip it."
Especially if they're going to be upbeat about it, you can listen to 5 minutes of that.
Yeah. I wonder if in the future you can choose different voices, and that would be fun.
Oh, that would be
maybe
fun.
You could have customers have me and Jimmy doing.
That would be scary though, because you wouldn't actually know, is this actually them on the podcast or?
I know. I've heard AI versions of my voice. You can tell, but it's still scarily like it. So it's weird. All right.
That was fun.
So that brings us to my pick this week, and mine is an app for the iPhone. And there have been scanning apps for the iPhone for ages, for years and years and years. And so why another one? Well, this one comes from Agile Tortoise Software, which makes some of my favorite apps, including Drafts, which I use every day for many things. And but this app is called Simple Scan, and it's exactly what it says on the cover. It's a simple scanner, and it's free to download and use. But there is an in-app purchase with either $5 a year or $20 for a lifetime, which is well worth it. That's not much at all, and it's just. It works. It works well. It doesn't have it's so well designed. It gets out of the way. I've got a receipt. I need to scan it. I open up the app, hold the phone over it. I can see it's on the screen. I hit the button, it saves it. And then you can set up workflows where it automatically moves, certain kinds of documents that you scan to particular places, emails them or files them or whatnot.
You can do those sorts of things. Folder.
Yeah, exactly. It does OCR automatically, but you could also just have it, just put it into files, for you just as well. So it is, it's really, it's just a simple scanner, but it's a really good one. And the difference is it's so well designed. So much thought has been put into the interface and how it works. And that's why I want to make it my pick this week. Simple Scan from Agile Tortoise. So that is it from us this time. We'd love to know what you thought of anything we've discussed at this episode. We can do so by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/technology or the StarQuest Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Send an email to technology@sqpn.com. Visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord. If you have trouble getting to the Discord at that link, could you let me know at technology@sqpn.com? Because people have been saying that they've had some issues, and so I want to track it down, see what's going on there. Anyway, you can find links from our discussion and our picks of the week on our show notes at starquest.fm/TEC275. If you can, we really appreciate it when you write a review of the show in Apple Podcasts or wherever you can get podcasts from, wherever they let you do ratings or reviews, and share the podcast with your friends. That is the number one way it helps the show grow. We really do appreciate it. Until next time, Father Andrew Kinstetter, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of technology.
Absolutely. This was fun.
Pat Scott, thank you as well.
Thank you.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.